and development. With over 40 years experience, we are the only development finance institution that covers all 15 member states of ECOWAS, continuously driving developmental projects in the West African sub-region. For decades, we have tackled socio-economic challenges through our financing of programs that cover diverse initiatives for the sustainable development of member states. We provide financing for regional and national projects across priority sectors such as infrastructure, agriculture and climate resilience, industry and agro-processing, healthcare and education, transport and logistics, water, ICT and energy. We are a key driver of transformation, effecting positive change in the present for a future resilient, enabled and resourceful sub-region. We operate in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Côte d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. We have deep roots in innovating technology and growth. We initiated the African Biofuels and Renewable Energy Fund, ABREF. Now ABREC are founding shareholders of Askai Airlines and a founding shareholder in EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, ETI. We have and continue to enable key projects through our public and private windows with successful projects such as creation of the cement factory in Kagblelen by Diamond Cement Company, Guinea. Enhancement of the portable water supply system in Tafire town and the surrounding communities of Badikaha and Ngolodugu, Côte d'Ivoire. Rehabilitation and equipment of health facilities, Togo. Electrification by solar photovoltaic systems of 700 community infrastructure, Benin. Construction of 27 new drinking water supply systems in the impact area of the Samendeni Valley Integrated Development Program, Burkina Faso. Construction of the University of Science and Technology in the town of Koidu, Kono District, Sierra Leone. Installation and operation of an intravenous fluids factory at Verte by Do Pharma, Togo. Construction of a 120 megawatt thermal station at Maria Gleta, Benin. Construction of the Samendeni Dam and hydroelectric power station, Burkina Faso, to mention a few. We are poised to fulfill our developmental mandate under the leadership of the President, Dr. George Agyekum Donkor. We are EBID. EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities. We have more information for you at www.bidc-ebid.org.
The ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development (EBID) has recently published the 2023 edition of the West African Development Outlook, its annual development report and forecast on West Africa. The West African Development Outlook, an annual publication of socioeconomic indicators in the sub-region, reports on the performance and outlook at the country level as well as the sub-regional level, covering topical issues affecting countries like growing public debt levels and an increase in poverty. The 2023 West African Development Outlook aims to enhance the socioeconomic discourse of the sub-region, inform and enable analysis of the countries. As one of the key documents of EBID, the West African Development Outlook serves as an engine in driving the discourse and recommending pertinent ways on how countries in West Africa can navigate some of the development challenges in short to medium term. Visit our website www.bidc-ebid.org to access and download for free the 2023 West African Development Outlook. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities.
Very interesting conversation that is going to go on in a few seconds. It's the presidential roundtable dubbed Greening West Africa that is being put together by the ECOWAS Bank for Development. Now, this conversation is going to be on environment, social, and governance. That's ESG, and it's going to be such a riveting discussion. I want you to stay on because in a few seconds we will roll out the footprints of ESG that has been led by EBID in a few years. And then, of course, after that, when we come back, it will be the conversation that will stay interesting and will educate you on why we must stay sustainable as West Africa. Please don't go away as we play a few minutes of documentary, and then we'll be back.
We are West Africa's premium bank for investment and development. With over 40 years' experience, we are the only development finance institution that covers all 15 member states of ECOWAS, continuously driving developmental projects in the West African sub-region. For decades, we have tackled socio-economic challenges through our financing of programs that cover diverse initiatives for the sustainable development of member states. We provide financing for regional and national projects across priority sectors such as infrastructure, agriculture and climate resilience, industry and agro-processing, healthcare and education, transport and logistics, water, ICT, and energy. We are a key driver of transformation, effecting positive change in the present for a future resilient, enabled, and resourceful sub-region. We operate in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. We have deep roots in innovating technology and growth. We initiated the African Biofuels and Renewable Energy Fund, ABREF. Now ABREC are founding shareholders of Askai Airlines and a founding shareholder in EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, ETI. We have and continue to enable key projects through our public and private windows with successful projects such as creation of the cement factory in Kagbelen by Diamond Cement Company, Guinea, enhancement of the portable water supply system in Tafire Town and the surrounding communities of Badikaha and Ngolodugu, Cote d'Ivoire, rehabilitation and equipment of health facilities, Togo, electrification by solar photovoltaic systems of 700 community infrastructure, Benin, construction of 27 new drinking water supply systems in the impact area of the Samendeni Valley Integrated Development Program, Burkina Faso, construction of the University of Science and Technology in the town of Koidu, Kono District, Sierra Leone, installation and operation of an intravenous fluids factory at Verte by Doe Pharma, Togo, construction of a 120 megawatt thermal station at Maria Gleta, Benin, construction of the Deni Dam and hydroelectric station, Burkina Faso, to mention a few. We are poised to fulfill our developmental mandate under the leadership of the President, Dr. George Agyekum Donkor. We are EBID. EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities. We have more information for you at www.bidc-ebid.org.
In case you just tuned in, you're watching Metro Television, and we are having the Presidential Roundtable. It's ably brought to you by the ECOWAS Bank for Development, and of course, with the very leadership of Dr. George Agyekum Donkor, who's the President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of EBID. Now, the conversation, like I indicated, is going to be looking at ESG from the perspective, for me, of financing and, of course, of the governance issues, which are critical. If you don't have the money, ESG is not cheap. So, for example, by 2030, every single year, Africa needs about $1 trillion to actually meet its ESG compliance issues relating to adaptation and mitigation. That is the whopping amount that we need as Africans. Yet just 7% of this amount is actually doled out through donor organizations. And of course, this is actually also coming 62% of them as loans. So there are a couple of challenges that we need to deal with. We need to know what our challenges are, and then based on that, we profess solutions. The real issues are that our macro environments do not look stable enough, and those who actually have good regulations, like South Africa, like Morocco, are actually attracting some of these great funding. And so we will need, as West Africa, to position in these two areas, governance and, of course, issues relating to finances. And I'm excited to have ECOWAS Bank actually supporting to make this conversation possible. And the President and Chairman of the Board is here, Dr. Agyekum Donkor, to set the tone in terms of give us a general overview, and then the conversation will begin. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Odelia. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, our viewers around the world, it is my honor and delight this morning to welcome you all very warmly to my first in a series of pivotal, high-level, roundtable discussion on the topic Green West Africa. We have met here not only as leaders and experts in our various disciplines, but we also met here to actually address very important issue. You all know that West Africa is endowed with natural resources and vibrant cultures, and West Africa is poised, to succeed. But this responsibility or this aspiration doesn't come on a silver platter. We actually need to manage our resources properly, create jobs, and also, address all the challenges that we have to be able to come to that level. Not forgetting the fact that we need to also protect our continent. The African heads of state and governments, along with global leaders and various stakeholders, just last month met in Nairobi on the inaugural African Climate Summit, which was held around 4th to 6th September 2023. Now, this summit recognized the importance of addressing climate change, bearing in mind the African vulnerabilities and its potential to lead climate solutions. The Nairobi Declaration also underscored the importance of global collaboration to reduce emissions and to fulfill climate finance commitment. The same summit, you recall, that also addressed or called for the need for what we call equitable global governance, debt relief measures, and of course, the other challenges to come on board to be able to ensure that we stay, in the rightful position as Africans. Ladies and gentlemen, the summit actually committed themselves to green industrialization and also sustainable agriculture, and furtherly, the need to also transit from emission to renewable energies. For the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, that is your bank, ECOWAS Bank has over the years fulfilled its mandate by actually financing impactful projects and programs, venturing into areas like renewable energy to support sustainable agriculture. But the bank must do more. We are still in the process of the business of allocating funds to finance impactful projects. But the truth of the matter is that it's not only allocating funds. We need to ignite awareness and actions in this regard. We also have to underscore that sustainability is something which is, it's not just an aspiration, but it's a shared commitment by all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to welcome our expert here this morning. Christopher is here, Debbie is here, Olumide is here. These are luminaries in their own field, and I believe that together we'll be able to navigate the complexities of greening West Africa. It is my hope that all of us will stay with us and then contribute to this conversation, which I believe will inure to the benefit of the entire region. On this note, I would like to welcome you very warmly and wish all of us very fruitful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you so much. So, like Doctor was trying to help me with the introductions, I will start with you, Dr. Derry. Dr. Derry is the Director for Environment and Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation. Innovation is critical for Ghana. He's a lawyer by profession, so the two of you are lawyers, a public administrator and a certified chartered environmentalist. He has a PhD from the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. Doctor, welcome. Am I missing out on anything that you would want to add?
That's fine. You've been very, very generous.
Okay. Welcome to the conversation. Then to my immediate left is Christophe Coté. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
My little French reminds me that you don't mention the last letters at the end of every French word. And so it could have been Cotet if you were going to say it in English. Okay, great.
You said it very correctly.
Thank you. Means my French teacher should be excited. So Christophe is an economist by training. He has a PhD, and his PhD thesis in economics in 2008 was dedicated to the analysis of debt sustainability and debt relief in Africa. He has been working at AFD for 15 years. He's the author of several publications on Africa and other geographies, that's notably India, and led the writing of an atlas on Africa published in 2020. And as a geographer, atlases make me excited. And so I'm happy that we share something in common. Now, to my very good friend who is from a country that has all the population and sometimes all the money. To you, Mr. Olumide Lala, you are devoted, you've had a devoted career in helping business leaders and governments find solutions to global challenges on climate change, sustainable financing, and capital markets infrastructural development gaps. You've also been responsible for driving the development of green bonds in Africa, with a particular focus on managing partnership programs, policy advisory, and market structures. I'm excited to have you join the conversation as my brother from Nigeria. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great. This morning, all of us have been having some exhilarating conversations on why it's important to have ESG as a focused area for everyone. I'd like to open the floor for all of you with the same kind of question to basically find out from all of you how, from your various fields, you're supporting West African countries to transition green growth that will promote the use of sustainable natural resources, encourage job creation, and improve economic development. So I'll start with you, EBID, Doctor. Definitely, your focus really is providing the financing. Maybe you'd want to start the conversation from exactly how this has been going on from the perspective of West Africa.
Thank you very much, Odilia. Thank you once again, distinguished panelists. Let me start by, giving a little background about the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, so that our viewers would appreciate where we are coming from. The ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development is the regional financial institution owned by the 15 ECOWAS member countries. I think that the countries are very clear, and there'll be no need for me to mention the names. The bank actually started as a fund in 1979 as the then ECOWAS Fund for Cooperation, Compensation and Development. And so from 1979, it started operating as a fund. Remember that the ECOWAS was founded around 1975. So the bank was also established about the same time. The underlying, objective of this bank or of this fund was to actually finance development projects and programs in the area of energy, infrastructure, education, ICT, health, and so forth and so forth. I'm sure our viewers know about the bank. Now, from 1979 up to 1999, as I indicated earlier, it operated as a fund. By 1999, the Authority of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS actually saw the need to actually transform the fund into a bank in order to enhance its financial resources and to make it more relevant to the needs of the economies of West Africa. So in 1999, the bank metamorphosed into, the fund metamorphosed into a bank under the name the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development. And it has since operated as a bank from 1999. We have two windows, the public sector and the private sector. Now, the private sector, we deal with all the organization, all the companies, enterprises within the ECOWAS member state. And in terms of our public sector space, we deal with governments. So that's the way we have been operating over these years. As I speak to you this morning, the bank has invested almost $4 billion across the various sectors of the economies of West Africa. Now, coming back to our topic.
Doctor, over what period of time?
That is when we started as a bank.
Okay.
Now, coming back to our topic, our conversation this morning, ESG is very, very key to the bank. And of course, all forward-looking institutions in recent time are now also coming out with ESG policies and procedures. Because if you don't do that, you will not attract international recognition. And so as a bank, we have also put in place ESG policy. And right from the origination, from the appraisal of all projects, remember that I said earlier that our projects cut across infrastructure, energy, ICT, health, technology, and so forth and so forth. Now, in recent time, a lot of attention has been paid into ESG, that is renewable energy. We are all transiting from fossil resources, solar. Now we are moving to renewable resources like solar, wind, electric power. Because the reason is that the world is trying to manage, climate very well. Climate change is all over the world now, and therefore, as a bank, right from the very origination, we ensure that our experts are on the ground to actually go along with the technical people in appraising the project. In looking at that, we look at the environmental, the social, and the governance impact of whatever project that we finance, either for the private, in the private sector or in the public sector. The idea is to ensure that at the end of the day, the environmental impact of the projects have been clearly fulfilled. Because remember that our lenders also require ESG, compliance report from us. Yeah. Not only by ensuring that right from the origination, we take ESG seriously, but after even the projects have been implemented, we have to go occasionally. In fact, in my bank, every 3 months, we have to be on site to assess and evaluate or measure the impact of ESG on the project to see whether the impact of the ESG goals that we set ourselves to do from the beginning have been fulfilled. And so as a bank, we take it very seriously, and that is what has actually engaged our attention over the period. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much also for making this conversation possible, because the education is highly needed. And so I come to you, Doctor, to find out from you how this conversation, how this particular issue has been taken from the perspective of regulation from Ghana, and then, of course, the larger lens.
Okay, so thank you very much also for the opportunity. And let me congratulate EBID for organizing these discussions around this time, especially the fact that we just came from the African Climate Summit and we are preparing to go to COP28 in Dubai. We also held the Climate Ambition Summit in New York alongside the United Nations General Assembly. So this is the right time to have such a discussion. But globally, if you look at every multilateral environmental agreement that is supposed to assist countries to transition to a green growth or green development, there are three important things that are seen as barriers or that have to be given to developing countries in order to enable them to carry out the transition. The first is capacity, the second is finance, and the third is technology transfer. Now, beyond that, let me be very specific in our context when it comes to maybe West African countries and Ghana for that matter. The first thing for me is to assist this region to be able to first identify its capital assets, account for them, and place a value on them. Because you cannot sell what you don't know. You can only sell what you know. And if you are talking about finance, if we're able to capitalize and understand our capital assets, our natural capital assets, we are able to account for them, we are able to place value on them, it could become a very good collateral for attracting investments. So that is the first thing we need to do as far as this region is concerned. And in Ghana, we are working on natural capital accounting with the Ghana Statistical Service and trying to make sure that we create appropriate accounts so we can account for every natural asset that we have in this country. There's a lot that we have that sometimes we underrate. Let me tell you, if we have to transition to renewables, we need lithium. Ghana has the potential for that. How do we account for this? We even have potentials for green hydrogen. How do we account for this? All these rivers, biodiversity, rich biodiversity that we have. We are part of the Guinea forest zone of West Africa. All these things are potential assets that help when it comes to decarbonization and also preserving environmental integrity. So we need to first understand this. And
How long is it going to take to collect this data with the Ghana Statistical Service? Because I don't want us to leave and miss out on that.
So what we are doing is that because the environment is large, we are looking at sector by sector. Okay. So we are currently dealing with energy statistics, and then we are looking at environmental statistics. We will go into other sectors, water, forest, and others. You know, it has to be a gradual process, and that's what we're doing. But it's a very important thing that we need to do. It's the kind of support that countries within this region need, and then we need to work with that. Unfortunately, we are working with some of our partners from the development partners community to work on to get this done. Beyond that, once you are able to place a value on what you have and you can market that, you can now attract investments. And to attract investments, this region, we need to support them to be able to develop what I call bankable green projects. There are quite a number of pipeline projects that we have in the system, but how do we turn them and make them bankable? How do we make sure that they meet the criteria that is set by the funding agencies in order to be able to qualify? Another important thing when it comes to finance is how do we de-risk green investments to make them attractive and provide the needed incentives? These are very critical. And that is what we are doing. We're currently working with the Ministry of Finance in Ghana with support from Global Shield to develop insurance for climate, interventions and things like these are just to create incentives and also provide buffers that will kind of de-risk green financing. So that is very important. Now, beyond that, technology. How do we assist this region to get the needed technology?
Sorry, before you go into the conversation on technology, I'm interested in reporting.
Yeah.
Because reporting standards will also be able to give us.
That was going to be my fourth point, actually. After
in Ghana, they'll say
technology
I'm
transfer.
scooping the soup from the.
I know, and I know you have always been interested in the environment, so I'm not surprised about that. So, how do we get technology transfer? So, for example, we have potential for green hydrogen. We have potential for lithium. We have potential for solar. In fact, West Africa has the sunshine for almost about 9 or more hours in a day. I mean, more than any other part of this world. So how do we harness this? But we need technology to be able to harness this. So we need to work on getting the technology. And how do we do that? We need to ensure that those who are keeping the technology, those who are patenting the technology, ease or grant access to countries such as West African countries, so that we can access these technologies in order to transition to a green economy. And then the fourth point, which you mentioned, how to comply with standards. In Ghana, we had a very interesting reporting system known as Agyekum some years ago, where the industry was expected to report on how they were sustainably managing the environment when it comes to their businesses and their production processes. And this kept most of these companies on toes. Yeah. So we need to look at how do we strengthen, how do we deal with compliance issues, how do we ensure that we're able to monitor what private sector or industry is doing and be able to report accurately. Let me tell you that reporting is also important because it kind of provides the kind of transparency that is needed which then further allows for those who are ready to finance projects to come in. Because when you're able to demonstrate that, look, you are doing what is right and that you are following the principles and standards that have been set, then you tend to attract further funding. So these are some of the things that we have to do. And in Ghana, we are doing that. I mean, I mentioned the ACOBED. We have even developed what we call the sustainable banking principles for the finance sector to ensure that whatever projects they are funding, they look at the environmental sustainability of those projects and that they don't just fund any project at all. I don't want to mention certain sectors for the purposes that might even derail some of the discussions. But that is what we are doing. And we are working very hard as a country and with some of our peers, neighboring countries. We're learning examples from our neighbors. For example, Nigeria has been able to issue green bonds. How can we do that in Ghana? Of course, we do appreciate the fact that currently the fiscal space might not be conducive for the issuance of green bonds, but definitely in the near future, it is possible to do so. So these are some of the things that we are working to support countries in West Africa, and particularly also Ghana, to transition to a green growth.
I will come back to you on how listed companies, for example, could be brought into the reporting system, because that is where a country like South Africa started from. And then there was a ripple effect, and almost every country now wants to do the right things because they know that if they do not do a proper reporting, it's likely that they will not get the needed funding that they are looking for. So I'll come back to you on listed companies and how we could use that as the starting point. Christophe, so the Agence Française de Développement Group funds, supports, and accelerates the transition to a fairer and more sustainable world, focusing on climate, biodiversity, peace, education, urban development, health, and governance. So far, your team across the world has implemented 4,300 projects. How has this gone to help with job creation, with improvement of the economy, and of course, looking at green growth?
Thank you, Odelia, for the question. And maybe if you allow me, I will start by thanking EBID for the invitation. And I must say I feel at home because really we feel like a sister company to EBID. We are also a public bank. We are dedicated to development, and we have a very strong partnership with EBID, and I'm sure it will go on. So thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you also for choosing that specific topic. Odelia, you mentioned that climate change, adaptation, mitigation really is at the heart of what AFD has been doing everywhere in the world, and it's our mandate here. And just for the record, I just wanted to say that so I'm the country director for Ghana and Liberia, and just for history, Ghana has been the first, I would say, non-francophone country in which we opened an office. It was in 1982.
Well done.
At the time, and from there we try to expand. So for history, you when you formulated the question, I found the formulation of the question quite interesting. You say, how can you support Western African countries transitioning to green growth that will promote the use of sustainable natural resources, encourage job creation, and improve economic development? And what I find interesting in that question is that you need to find project, I think, that combines the achievement of three goals. Because my main message actually is that most of the time there is, I would say, limited contradiction between promoting adaptation or mitigation to climate change and green growth, and I would say prosperity. That's very important for me, because I have the feeling that we have, if we want to raise awareness, we also have to convince people.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is the feeling that when you are trying to adapt to climate change, then you will lose some percentage points of growth. I'm not sure of that. Let me just give you some examples. When you are limiting floodings in cities because the rainfalls are becoming erratic, then I think you are promoting the well-being of people there. When you are promoting resilient agricultural practices, I think you are promoting the well-being of farmers. When you are promoting, and Peter, you were mentioning solar, etc., I think you are promoting future growth, really. And I would say that for me, it's really important that we find ways to combine prosperity and fighting against climate change. So that's my main point. And maybe a second point. So how we do promote and what we do in the different countries where we are, mainly we are a financer, a bit like EBID, a development financer, meaning that we bring finance, we try to bring cheaper finance than what you can find on the market. Then the French government will, in a sense, subsidize those financing. And then we also try to find very interesting projects that contribute to climate change adaptation and mitigation. But I would say our contribution is, while I find it really important, is still a small contribution. And for me, I feel part of a larger family of banks, and EBID is one of them, of a large family of public banks that are really, I think, financing that transition. In Ghana, we have many public banks, actually, and I think that's one strength of Ghana, having a number of public banks that are focusing on green growth. So I hope that our contribution is useful. What I am really interested in is, in a sense, mainstreaming the idea that financing growth financing green growth is good for Africa, for the world, I would say, and share that opinion and share those activities with other public banks.
Thank you very much, Christophe. So, did you want to make some quick comments? Yes.
So, thank you very much, Odilia. Let me take this opportunity to express, on behalf of EBID, our profound sense of gratitude to AFD. They have been our strong partner. Well, I mean, one of our strong partners over the years. They first extended about 50 million euro to us, for which we also on-lent to the SMEs, some of them for agriculture, fertilizer, and all those things. As we speak now, they're just about to make another 100 million euro available to us, and we have gone far with the credit, papers. Very soon we are going to sign. And so I just want to underscore the significant role that AFD is playing, of course, in West African region, not only West African, but of course also enhancing climate, resilience within the sub-region. So thank you very much. I just wanted to put this across. Thank you.
Okay.
So much.
Great. Mr. Olumide Lala, you were part of the team that successfully implemented and also got Nigeria its first green bond. I'm interested in you bringing the conversation from the financing perspective and what the opportunities that exists. And since you've been able to do it first, you perhaps should be able to educate all of us on how you did it. You were telling me how treacherous it was, how you did it, and how this can actually be replicated on the sub-region.
First things first, thank you very much for having us. Let me join my colleagues here in congratulating the EBID in actually starting this initiative. It's extremely important because, like they say, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And unless we start having conversations like this, all we will do is just talk about the problems and challenges all day long. And you know, one of the risks, obviously, of being the last speaker is that everybody else seems to have said everything that you want to say. However, in answer to your question, and I think it's important to speak to solutions, because that's basically what takes us forward. I mean, I was just this morning, I was having a comment on my school's website about Nigeria and some of the things that we're doing. And one of my colleagues turned around and said, so what is the solution? So I like to start with the solution. And as you said, because we had been part of actually creating the bond, the first African, in fact, the first sovereign to be certified against the climate bond standard across the world, not just Africa. We've had many countries that have issued green bonds, but none were certified against the climate bond standard. Now, just to give you an indication of how stringent that is, only 27% of bonds, green bonds issued globally are certified today against the climate bonds. So it was a very, as I said, treacherous but painful journey. It took a while. But the beauty of that is that other people that we speak to don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, they learn from the mistakes and the challenges that we have. So it makes it a lot easier. Incidentally, I was having a conversation with the Department of the Debt Department, the Ministry of Finance in 2019, 2020, just before the pandemic in Ghana, when in March the finance was your positions were refinanced in London, and we're looking to actually issue a green bond in Ghana, and suffice to say, obviously that never happened. We ended up with a green loan. But the one thing I will say is that, speaking to what you were saying and what my colleagues here with the money can do, is that it starts with actually building an effective and a verifiable list of eligible projects for green. It's one thing to say Africa needs $1 million, $1 trillion, whatever number you want to throw at it. Yeah? My position, and I always say this to people, when you get the money, what are you going to do with it? Unless you can make sure that the project is eligible based on the criteria that are set or need to be set, either bilateral, through contractual agreements or global standards, unless they're bankable, yeah, they're dead in the water. So the money can sit there, the money will never connect. However, one of the things that we can do, and this is part of the conversation you said in terms of even within Nigeria, and we subsequently issued a green bond, for instance, for Access Bank, which was also the first corporate bank in Africa to issue a green bond. When we started with a list of projects which we thought were green, by the time you applied the criteria to it, it whittles down very quickly. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, where you thought you had this big portfolio of projects that could connect to green finance, and just for the purpose of those, and I know we talk about climate change, we talk about green, and it's become so mainstream now, we assume everybody knows what we're talking about. The difference between a green bond and a normal bond, or vanilla bond, as we say, is what you actually finance. And by that means, it actually has to finance what we consider to be eligible for green financing and green assets. There are certain criteria, sector, subsector, that allows you to meet this, thresholds and all of that stuff, yeah? So you need to meet those thresholds for it to be green. Now, suffice to say, in finance, we are all about returns, first and foremost. Yes, we need to green. However, we're beginning to realize that our the inability or reluctance, if you will, to green in the past has actually created more risk for us in the future. So in fact, it's actually good to go green than where we sit today. And I'll tell you why. So if you think about green financing generally, yeah, there are three main risks that financiers face today when it comes to green. The one we tend to speak about is the physical risk. You know, deforestation, desertification, rising sea levels, and all of those climatic issues that we have that we see. That's the main one that we talk about. But the two main ones that are likely to become a problem for financiers is actually transitional risk. And Dr. Peter Derry spoke earlier on about technology transfer. Technology is changing so quickly that financiers risk having the collateral becoming obsolete because of changing technology. So technology transfer is important. We need to be able to identify that trend. Where is the world going? So when you hold on to assets that potentially could be obsolete in years to come, you need to figure out how to transfer your risk out of that into something else. Now, obviously, you can't shut down a position. But over time, if you put the right strategy in place with the right pro-climate strategy in your business, then you begin to look at how you de-risk your position, how you move from that. The one thing, however, that will face not just the banks, but also other companies, but more the banks itself, is liability. There will come a time when people will start suing people, either for lack of information, incorrect information, or for the impacts that you have financed that has caused environmental issues for communities. And by that, I was explaining earlier, consider a situation where a financier, for instance, has financed a company to the tune of $1 million. And because of the practices of that company, they effectively ruin the environment or create situations whereby people start to die. And the government penalizes that company to the tune of $4 million. Now, clearly, that's a situation where the company cannot handle. They will go bankrupt. But who owns the collateral? It's the bank, it's the financier. Now that transfers to them. So you've gone from a position where you think in your books you have $1 million assets to a possible unlimited liability, because not only have you got to clean up the environment, which is the tune of the penalty itself, which is $4 million, the cleanup cost, and the damage to the bank's reputation for actually financing something that has done so much harm. We talk about the do no harm syndrome. So effective from a financier's perspective, where we're heading, we need to start looking at the type of resources that we actually employ. It cannot be the old school. I mean, I'm an old banker. It cannot be about finance and economics anymore. We have to start looking at geologists. We have to looking at people who understand the environment. Sustainability can no longer be about corporate banking. Where we do it because we look good. This is serious stuff. Yes. This sits within corporate risk. In fact, it's a risk issue that the financiers need to take seriously. I will stop there for now, but as you can tell, this is something that is close to my heart. I mean, I was making a lot of notes as to some of the things that my colleagues were talking about where we can address in terms of reporting technology, the risking, and the likes. But we will come to that much later.
Thank you very much for summarizing for me. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back and the conversation will continue, but I'm sure it's going to continue from the perspective of risk and what we can do as financing organizations. And then, of course, we will go into the legal conversations on regulation. Please don't go away. Come back with us as we look at the environment.
We are West Africa's premium bank for investment and development. With over 40 years' experience, we are the only development finance institution that covers all 15 member states of ECOWAS, continuously driving developmental projects in the West African sub-region. For decades, we have tackled socio-economic challenges through our financing of programs that cover diverse initiatives for the sustainable development of member states. We provide financing for regional and national projects across priority sectors such as infrastructure, agriculture and climate resilience, industry and agro-processing, healthcare and education, transport and logistics, water, ICT, and energy. We are a key driver of transformation, effecting positive change in the present for a future resilient, enabled, and resourceful sub-region. We operate in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Côte d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. We have deep roots in innovating technology and growth. We initiated the African Biofuels and Renewable Energy Fund, ABREF. Now ABREC are founding shareholders of Askai Airlines and a founding shareholder in EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, ETI. We have and continue to enable key projects through our public and private windows with successful projects such as creation of the cement factory in Kagbelen by Diamond Cement Company, Guinea, enhancement of the portable water supply system in Tafiri Town and the surrounding communities of Badikaha and Ngolodugu, Cote d'Ivoire, rehabilitation and equipment of health facilities, Togo, electrification by solar photovoltaic systems of 700 community infrastructure, Benin, construction of 27 new drinking water supply systems in the impact area of the Samendeni Valley Integrated Development Program, Burkina Faso, construction of the University of Science and Technology in the town of Koidu, Kono District, Sierra Leone, installation and operation of an intravenous fluids factory at Aveta by Doe Pharma, Togo, construction of a 120 megawatt thermal station at Maria Gleta, Benin, construction of the Samendeni Dam and hydroelectric power station, Burkina Faso, to mention a few. We are poised to fulfill our developmental mandate under the leadership of the President, Dr. George Agyekum Donkor. We are EBID. EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities. We have more information for you at www.bidc-ebid.org.
Social and governance issues that has been ably put together by EBID under the presidential conversation that is roundtable that is going on. And of course, we have had in the studio discussing greening West Africa, Dr. George Agyekum Donkor, who's the president and chairman of the board of directors of EBID. Then we've also had Dr. Peter Derry, who is the Director of Environment and Climate Change, Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation for Ghana. Then we've also had Christophe Cote, who is the Country Director for Ghana and Liberia, Agence Française de Développement, AFD. And then my very good friend from Nigeria, Mr. Olumide Lala, who is the co-founder and executive director, Climate Finance Solutions, Climate Transition Limited. And we left off all of you with issues of de-risking, issues connecting to knowledge, which is critical to making sure that even as we would like to leapfrog and get some great financing in the sector, these are issues that are staring us in the face that we will need to take a look at. So it just takes me to the next issue of what are the conditions, policies that we should have in place to support a resilient system that will present to us strategic ESG goals in our various countries in West Africa. I'll go with you first, Doctor.
Okay, so thank you very much. So first and foremost, we need to develop what we call possible a net zero goal. So that is what you need. And to do this, you now need to break this into various sectoral policies. So for example, in the energy sector, you need an energy transition plan, which will focus more on how we can transition from the current, what we quote and unquote, dirty fuels to cleaner fuels and cleaner energy sources, including renewables, and not without what I would call transition fuels such as gas, even though...
Before you go into that, and I'd like to use the Ghana example as one of the things that could really inhibit the beautiful ideas that you're sharing in relation to transitioning to issues relating to contractual agreements that various countries have gone into with the current energy sources that we're using. So, for example, I've interviewed several ministers of energies who have said that one of the biggest challenge they have when it comes to energy transition is the fact that Ghana has gone into some contractual agreements that requires the use of the current energy sources that is making it difficult for the transitioning. And so in the past, we targeted that by now, we should have been even doing 10% of transition energy sources in the mix. But it seems that we cannot get there if we don't check the sort of agreements that we have entered into. So perhaps you may want to quickly comment on that so that other West African countries can take a cue from that in relation to contractual agreements that may inhibit their fast movement.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. You are referring to the IPPs.
Yes.
The power purchasing agreements that we have signed in the past. Of course, which we said because we were in a situation of emergency. All right. But definitely there have been some renegotiations and ongoing renegotiations to ensure that they find solutions to some of the challenges that we face in the power sector. But beyond that, renewables are still acceptable in Ghana. They may not come as utility farms, but they can come in as stand-alone projects. Okay. So, for example, rooftop solar systems are still allowed. Solar systems for to serve as mini grids are still allowed. Solar systems to be put in what we call the off-grid areas are still permissible. So there is still even opportunity for renewables, aside the fact that we have a challenge when it comes to generation or capacity because of the power purchase agreements that we signed in the past. So there is still opportunity for renewables. It's not a done deal. In any case, the projections from the Energy Commission and the Ministry of Energy shows that our current demand for energy in the next 5 years, if you look at our capacity, the capacity that installed capacity that we have, as against the projections for demand, it's going to equalize.
Wow.
It's going to equalize because demand will grow to catch up with the capacity that we have. And once it catches up, then we are back to square one. So it's still critical. Aside that, Ghana already has hydro in our energy mix, which is a very good source of renewable, and so it is not totally a done deal. But beyond that, let me say that even these power purchasing, these private sector energy generators, of course, if you look at the current amended renewable energy law, it now requires certain companies to go into what we call carbon offsets. Okay, so even though, yes, they are generating energy from dirty fuels, quote and unquote, they are also expected now to go into projects that will serve as maybe carbon sinks or in a way try to mitigate the emissions that they are putting out as a result of their activities or processes. So yes, we are not just sitting aloof and waiting for these power purchasing agreements to expire before we can transition. But then there are opportunities to do so even now. Let me tell you, currently, the Ministry of Transport has developed what is known as an e-vehicle policy. That policy, when it comes to implementation, will require that vehicles will need energy to charge. Vehicles will need energy to charge. Where are they going to get the energy from? From the so-called installed capacity that we have. So in the next few years, the problem of having excess capacity will definitely become a thing of the past. And that is why we need to still proceed with our energy transition plan. Now, beyond that, we are also looking at renewable energy, for example, for household chores, cooking, and the rest of it. So apart from just electricity generation, there are other aspects of energy. Yeah. Even if you talk about vehicles, vehicles need energy to run. And these energy sources are not coming from the power purchasing agreements that we have signed. So we can still transition. But we must also remember that even transition in itself is a process. It is not an event. And so what you need to do is to identify the low-hanging fruits, those that you can start with in the near term, in the mid-term, and then you gradually proceed to the long term. And I think that that is exactly how our energy transition plan has been designed.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Christoph.
So maybe if I may add something to say.
Yeah, I had wanted you to add up when everybody is done. Since you've got the money. You and Christoph, you have the money. Yes. I wanted to find out from you, especially when you have done some work in India as well, in terms of collecting data. What are some of the best practices in transitioning, and of course in the ESG space that we could pick as learnings in West Africa?
Okay, thank you. I'm not a specialist, but let me share some ideas.
Yes.
I would say. Really, Peter, you started with the idea of strategy. And I think the first thing it takes is a vision, actually, and to know where to go first, I think. And from there, you can start to adjust, for example, regulations. You were mentioning e-vehicles. What we want today is to have e-vehicles produced in Ghana, or you need to have the regulations in place to produce such kind of products, of vehicles, etc. So at least you want to have regulations that are not detrimental to what you want to achieve. The second thing is that if you are designing ESG projects, you want them to be, in a sense, inclusive. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to what I was saying in the first place, meaning that we should find ways to promote fight against climate change and prosperity. I think it's really important to explain and to say that we can find projects that will result not only in less CO2 emissions or better adaptations, but also increase in revenues for communities and population. That's, for me, that's important. Maybe and I'm looking at the President here. A third very important thing is to have affordable source of funding. Sometimes such fundings, such projects, ESG projects, they are kind of pilot projects. You have to innovate a bit. You have to take some risks. And for that, you have to find proper sources of funding. I think that's where institutions like EBID or AFD or AFDB, others, can help to provide such sources of funding. And for me, it's clearly a precondition. And maybe a last one. The projects that you want to promote, they must be adapted to fit the context. You cannot just bring technology solutions from abroad and put them in a country. It has to be appropriate in a sense. It has to be fitted to the homegrown technologies. And that really, for me, echoes with what Olomide was saying. It takes a lot of preparation to have the projects ready to be financed. Those projects that they usually, if I take a project from AFD, before funding the project, you will spend maybe 1 year, 1 year and a half, maybe more. Sometimes we are not a very speedy institution, quick institution. But I think it's important to have that time of preparation to be sure that the project you will put in place will be efficient and will be a success. So that would be my 4 takes. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Lala, I'm coming to you from where you left off because it feeds into the conversation of education, capacity building, and in fact, people being ready to be able to implement even all the conversation that we are looking at. And so what would you say should be the conditions and policies that should be put in place to support the effective realization of ESG, not just sitting at the top as a conversation, but something that comes down for everyone to be able to implement? Because it's not just about governments and even institutions, but it should become a daily conversation and an effect or something that all of us would want to work on.
You know, I don't often get the opportunity to speak to policy and finance in the same room at the same table, especially when you're talking about multilateral development institutions who support national development institutions and by default have bilateral conversations with the commercial banking sector, to whom we typically go to for our financing. So I guess in terms of solutions and how we can help bring this conversation more to the ground level where it becomes mainstream and all of us are talking about this. You made reference to something which actually trickled my mind in terms of right now, the way the policies are set in terms of our transition, we're spending a lot of our money and our efforts building other people's economies. We're not focusing on how do we empower local institutions, local companies to actually develop and manufacture in country. Because all we're doing, we're importing stuff from everywhere and they're creating jobs there. We need to focus. Look, Africa has the fastest growing population in the world. Mm-hmm. We have, on average, our average age is like 19%, 19 years. 67 to about 70% of our population is below 30. And the reason why you watch the news every single day and people are either running off to Canada, Australia, wherever it is they want to go, right? Or dying in the Mediterranean is because they feel a sense of hopelessness. But how can you be hopeless on a continent that is the richest continent in the world? The raw materials and the minerals that are used to manufacture all of this stuff abroad are here. So by default, even the carbon footprint of what we use is actually a lot larger than it ought to be because we're not producing it here. So the main focus, first and foremost, from government perspective is how do you support manufacturing on ground? How do you make it easy? How do you set up? I mean, look, it sounds short-termism, but in the long term, some of the countries that I looked, if I look to someone like Ireland, for instance, when I was in school, I actually went to school in Ireland back in the 80s. I know I don't look that old. But Ireland was a country whereby you finish your university and you run. They left. There was nothing. And one of the presidents stand around and say, you know what, we'll set tax enabled environment. All of a sudden you had people like Microsoft, Dell, and all that stuff coming into the country to set up because they had a 10-year tax break. Now, not only did you create opportunities for those coming out of the universities, those who left came back home. And of course, we had the so-called Irish tiger, as it were, and the whole place developed. You know, we can do that in Africa. We can create enabling environments through policies such that we begin to create and manufacture things here. That's number one. Apart from the carbon footprint, it creates jobs and people actually now. Then the second is about education. So when we talk about capacity, I actually like to look about in terms of capabilities, which is people, process, technology, and governance. How do you create an environment where knowledge is easy? It has to go back to our universities. A lot of our universities today, if you look at the universities abroad, yeah, a lot of the patent technology comes out of those universities. Mm-hmm. Our universities should be made to be sources and originators of the new technology that we're talking about and should be empowered by the government to ensure that that is retained here. Now, from the financier's perspective, one of the challenges that we have, and it's changing, is that the credit risk assessment framework is not fit for the future. It looks to how we do things in the past, collateral and all that kind of stuff. As you said, a lot of these are new and innovative opportunities. There's no way a guy who just set up yesterday to build solar panels has any collateral to give. Now, I'm not saying the bank should throw away the t-shirt, yeah? But the truth is, you know, you need to restructure stuff. We need to put in place de-risking facilities. I was asking earlier on in terms of relationships with, we got entities like the African Guarantee Fund. We've got in Nigeria, we've got the Impact Guarantee Fund. We've got all of this. We've even got in Nigeria, we've got forget my mind, it will come to me. But we're building all of this, the risking facilities today that will support the lending process so that we can actually begin to meet the needs of these innovative projects. However, top of mind is the project preparation facility. I'll give an example of something that I've just recently worked on in Rwanda, where we just built a Rwanda fund, which was actually launched at the last COP in Egypt, where on the one side, you've got the credit facility and you've got the guarantee, but on the other side of it is the project preparation fund. And that supports the development of the pipelines, educates not just the financiers, but even the people developing the project. So we were talking earlier about ground up. By educating, you see, you can't manage what you can't measure. So we say there is no data, there's no data. The data is available. But the question I'll ask is, when was the last time a bank contacted the Ministry of Environment for information on any lending they'd like to do? So collectively, we need to start connecting data portals, because right now we work in silos. So there's a need for us to work together. And just to close, you made reference to the African Climate Forum or Week in Nairobi. Actually, and the African Development Bank has been very forefront about this. They partnered with GFAN, and of course it's collaborative to everybody, to set up the African Financial Alliance on Climate Change. That speaks to 5 pillars, and I'll stop with that. But this is more important: learning and leadership. Yeah, awareness and leadership. It speaks to education, capacity, getting information out there. But also it talks about data. Why data is important, but it's comparable data that we can all use, connecting the sources to every portal that are out there. It's a big project. I mean, I used to do technology-enabled transformation, but it's massive. But once you have the data, it's easy to have things in real time. Then when you do that, you build the right policies and regulations around that. It is at that point you can do proper risk management. And I guarantee you, it's a long-term strategy. But once you do that, it becomes a lot easier to then to mobilize funds and connect finance to projects.
Thank you very much. Now you can have a good conclusion and show us where the money is in the bank.
Thank you, Delia. So let me thank my colleagues for actually coming out with all the important ingredients that we need in this whole conversation. Now, from the bank's perspective, Olumide mentioned the issue of new businesses. They don't have collateral. But of course, as part of the requirement, let me first tackle due diligence. It is important for us to actually, from the beginning of the project, examine whether all the components meet the requirement of the bank in terms of funding. So, of course, whether the business is new, unfortunately, we don't finance set-up businesses. As a bank, we don't do that. The reason is simple: because of the risks involved. Remember that new businesses don't have anything to show. And so we would recommend that for new businesses, you may resort to some of the local small banks. But of course, a bank like ours, with a huge capital and with huge, intervention, I think it is very important for us to actually take due diligence seriously and to ensure that all the components of the projects comply with the relevant policies and procedures of the bank. Now, having said that, let me come to the transitioning that we spoke about. Peter mentioned what the government is doing. I think that another point we need to bear in mind is change of mentality and practices. Let me say that tradition is the worst enemy of civilization, because it has no regard for current knowledge. You see, for example, funding, renewable energy projects has a lot of benefits. And of course, we can do that by actually building or constructing infrastructure, climate infrastructure, facilities. For example, there could be a policy that all those who are, if you are building a new house, you will need to apply energy efficient technologies, energy efficient appliances. This should be a law. And so it should not be left in the hands of individuals to decide whether I should do this. I think it's one of the practical ways of ensuring that climate, initiatives actually come to stay with us. So probably we need to do that. Not only education, we also need the partnership, the public-private partnership. The government has to partner with investors. He has to partner with, financiers like us to be able to actually have a standardized policy regarding, ESG. For example, it should be a clear policy that if there is the way that we want to go, then it is incumbent of everybody to comply. It's incumbent upon organizations and other societies to comply with that. So the point I want to raise is that the PPP government actually partner with all the stakeholders to promote sustainable, development, in our region is very key. Probably what we also need to address is the risk component that Peter mentioned. There is a whole perception in terms of risk. Social and green investors, they think that our society, our region is very risky, and therefore there's the need for us to find a way of more or less changing the perception about some of these things. And so we need to look at it holistically if we really want to make an inroads in this area of our conversation. As I said, the government has a part to play, financiers have a part to play, and the individuals, of course, also have a part to play. So this is what I want to say about the transition. We need...
Gentlemen, we've got to go for a quick break, and then we'll be back. I know all of you have interesting things to say. We'll take a quick break, just a blink, and we'll be back. So we're back. I told you that you just have to blink and we'll be back. Yes. And we have just about 20 minutes to close this. And so I'd like you to make this really snappy. Just 30 seconds for both of you who have additional thoughts. I'll start with you, Dr. Derry.
Yes. I'm just building on what Dr. Agyekum mentioned. Yes, we have revised the building code. The building code requires that people do what you have said. People install energy efficient systems in their homes. We have even moved away from septic tanks to ensure that there's construction of either biogas or biofuels. All these green
Let
initiatives.
me quickly say that, and that is why at first it was just the ECG that was doing your wiring. Now you actually have an energy commission person in addition to ECG
who have been certified.
To do that. Yeah.
So that has been catered for. In addition to that, the environmental assessment regulations have also been revised. And in those regulations, companies and other institutions are expected to report on their carbon footprints and how they are sustainably managing the environment. For example, how do they even use their water? How do they dispose of their wastewater and things like that? What kind of energy efficient systems have they put in place in terms of lighting or in terms of how they use other energy for processing? So all these things have been catered for. What we need to do as a country is to ensure that we enforce them on the ground and get the results. Make sure that we're able to monitor closely, to report, and then make sure that we build on the system as we go along to make sure that we improve constantly.
30 seconds is up.
Yeah, I just want to make 3 points actually, and I'm glad that Dr. Peters actually made reference to some of the things being done in Ghana. I was going to make an example of Kenya, for instance, whereby if you're building a property that is more than 4 rooms, you must have a solar panel on the roof. And this is something that obviously should be applied. But as he mentioned, governance is an issue. Rule of law. People must comply, but people must be held accountable. And if they don't, of course, that's linked to their mortgage. In terms of, we're talking about lack of collateral. Yeah, we can use the concept of SPVs, for instance. Yeah, where a larger entity aggregates a lot of the small projects, where the collateral you're looking for, we can securitize future receipts and actually use that as some form of and get some wrap around it to make the bankers comfortable. But you have one entity that can trickle down the loans to the smaller guys and manage the risk for you. And of course, collect the data that you need for reporting. The one thing also that I wanted to point out, we're talking about a cost of financing. You talked about risk and perception. would you believe that it's actually, even though the risk in some cases is actually less on the African continent, it's 5 times more expensive to raise capital in Africa than it is in America, and 8 times more expensive than some of the richest European countries. And you have to ask yourself why. It's the same money. And this is why we took a lot longer to come out of the COVID financing than they did. They were getting 0% in some cases, whilst we had to buy the risk at a higher finance. But we'll get to solutions around that in a minute.
Thank you, gentlemen. We are going into the conversation of energy transitions, and it is actually the biggest chunk of or the contributor to where we are currently, for which we even are having environmental, social, and governance conversations. And so I'm interested in finding out from you, and of course from the government side, how we can effectively fill the gaps to improve access to affordable energy supply. It's affordable. For instance, onshore wind costs currently is $59 per megawatts. Yet, and then of course, solar PV costs $79 per megawatts. And meanwhile, the cost of coal is $109 per megawatts, $109. And so the potential is there to use wind, to use solar energy. And so what effectively can we do to make sure that it moves from just mere rhetorics to really happening on the ground? Christoph.
Yes, so that's a critical question, I suppose, for all West African countries. We have been financing quite a lot of energy infrastructure. To say it very quickly and simply, you must first have a focus on quality and efficiency of the transport and distribution of electricity. This is something, when you think about energy, very often you think about producing energy. You have that challenge also of transporting energy. You have that challenge of distributing energy. Sure. And you have that challenge also of collecting the payment from the client in the end. All that, I suppose, involves a lot of investments. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, we have been working with Gridco, which is a dear partner, to finance the transmission line connecting Kumasi to Burkina border. And the idea is to modernize, in a sense, the grid. You also want, I suppose, to promote reliable sources of energy. So obviously, we would like to see more of solar, because what you said, basically, I think today solar is cheap.
Yeah.
Solar is cheap.
Yeah, it is.
And that's a question I think we have, not only in Africa, everywhere in the world, of what we want to do with solar. If you go in China, if you go in the US, you will see solar booming, really. Between, I would say, solar, the idea of having more solar, and the idea of basically bringing electricity produced by solar, there is a critical challenge that nobody is talking a lot, which is that solar energy is intermittent. Sometimes during the day, you have electricity. During the night, you don't have electricity. That is, and I'm not a specialist, but I've been telling so, it is a huge challenge. If you want to bring solar in an energy system, you have to build smart grids that cost a lot of money. That's, I think, are the main challenge. But I think these challenges, honestly, these are challenges that will be faced by Western African countries soon. On that, I think the logic of EBID, the logic of having a bank at the level of a region is a very interesting source of financing, because basically countries are trading electricity between one another, and you want to connect them. You want to have a system which is at the regional level. So I think a lot of good things are already in place. You just need to push them, and I think a lot of donors really are ready to finance such projects.
Thank you very much, Christophe. And this time, when I say we are taking a break, it's a real break. You don't need to blink. When we come back, the rest of you are going to share your thoughts on the energy mix and how we can actually grow green and quicker, because we need it for the developments that we require as West Africa. Please, let's go for a quick break. We'll be back.
We are West Africa's premium bank for investment and development. With over 40 years' experience, we are the only development finance institution that covers all 15 member states of ECOWAS, continuously driving developmental projects in the West African sub-region. For decades, we have tackled socio-economic challenges through our financing of programs that cover diverse initiatives for the sustainable development of member states. We provide financing for regional and national projects across priority sectors such as infrastructure, agriculture and climate resilience, industry and agro-processing, healthcare and education, transport and logistics, water, ICT, and energy. We are a key driver of transformation, effecting positive change in the present for a future resilient, enabled, and resourceful sub-region. We operate in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Côte d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. We have deep roots in innovating technology and growth. We initiated the African Biofuels and Renewable Energy Fund, ABREF. Now ABREC are founding shareholders of Askai Airlines and a founding shareholder in EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, ETI. We have and continue to enable key projects through our public and private windows with successful projects such as creation of the cement factory in Kagbelen by Diamond Cement Company, Guinea. Enhancement of the portable water supply system in Tafiri Town and the surrounding communities of Badikaha and Ngolodugu, Côte d'Ivoire. Rehabilitation and equipment of health facilities, Togo. Electrification by solar photovoltaic systems of 700 community infrastructure, Benin. Construction of 27 new drinking water supply systems in the impact area of the Samendeni Valley Integrated Development Program, Burkina Faso. Construction of the University of Science and Technology in the town of Koidu, Kono District, Sierra Leone. Installation and operation of an intravenous fluids factory at Verte by Do Pharma, Togo. Construction of a 120 megawatt thermal station at Maria Gleta, Benin. Construction of the Samendeni Dam and hydroelectric power station, Burkina Faso, to mention a few. We are poised to fulfill our developmental mandate under the leadership of the President, Dr. George Agyekum Donkor. We are EBID. EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities. We have more information for you at www.bidc-ebid.org.
So welcome back. And by 2040 to 2050, about 90% of all the world's population that will not have energy will actually be in Africa. And that is not a palatable information that all of us would like to hear, but it's quite realistic. And so the next conversation that we're looking at on transitioning quickly and also being able to have affordable energy in order to grow faster than we actually expect is what we are looking at. And therefore, I'd like to go to one of the countries that currently has or houses some of that biggest challenge, Nigeria. So you're going to share with me what Nigeria is thinking of doing to close the gap, because I mean it's critical to make sure that, I mean, especially when you produce so much oil, sometimes it beats my mind that the country has such huge energy challenges, and you must have been looking at solutions as a country, isn't it?
It's an embarrassing position to be in. I'm told we've got 200 million people.
Yes.
And for the largest economy in Africa to suffer from energy poverty, for me, is mind-boggling. However, we have reasons for that. Sadly, you say we are a great exporter of crude.
Yeah.
But we don't refine any of it. Our refineries, Maribon, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. There hasn't been investment in this space. We've spent more time importing fuel, creating subsidies that have created billionaires in pockets, and literally, sadly, the entire economy is suffering because there are no job creations. Companies are struggling to finance their operations because so. But look, let's focus on
Solutions. So I came to you
so because
solutions.
people talk about all the problems all day long, and we've got legacy issues. And interestingly enough, we just had the largest refinery in the world just being built to be commissioned by a large Dangote, which potentially is still going to just extend this conversation around fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at the future of green in a country like Nigeria, for instance. There are three aspects that Christophe mentioned in terms of promoting energy transition: production, distribution, and payment collection. Mm-hmm. Let's just start from the premise that I'm not interested in developing the Chinese economy or the European economy. So this idea of financing imported solar panels and batteries and all that kind of stuff is not where I see it. Yeah, we have the potential. I mean, I said to somebody, and I bring memories up now. I said to somebody the other day that if we in Nigeria, for instance, the East, were able to build ammunitions and bombs and tractors during our civil war in the 60s, what does it take to build batteries? Yeah, so it's a case of we've got a company building cars in the east of in Nigeria. Yeah, normal cars. We talk about EVs, for instance. Even the government, yeah, should be making policies to say that we are buying from those local companies, not importing Toyotas and Mercedes from other countries. It's about, I'm not into what's the word? But you got to look after your economy. Yeah, our balance of payments suffer today. Just to give you some numbers, when I went to school in 1983, right? When I went abroad to school in 1983, the dollar to the naira was $1.50 to 1 naira. $1.50 to 1 naira. Today is $1,000, 1,000 naira to $1. Yeah, and that basically is because our balance of payments has been shifted towards importation. There needs to be an intentional investment strategy around this green energy transition in manufacturing in Nigeria or in Africa. The resources are here. We need to do that collectively. That's number one. You talk about distribution. Yeah, mini grids. It's very expensive to fund the distribution lines. We don't have to do that. Yeah. Let's borrow from telco, for instance, right? So you focus where you can in mini grids to get the power. It's all about getting power, right? So we get the power there. So let's invest in mini grids. yeah, and look to how efficiently and effective the financiers can do that in a more safe environment, because obviously they don't want to lose their money. Payment collection, the telco companies, for instance, struggle with this initially. How do I get payments, upfront or whatever? There's strategies to ensure that you get your payments. We need to deploy that. And we need to also focus on productive energy, yeah? So let's look at the businesses that can pay, rather than, yeah, we all want residential, but if you think about it, I only go home to sleep at night. The banks are not interested in financing that. That's not where the money is coming from. Let's finance the real economy. The companies that are actually needing energy for operations, they will pay, because the more money they make, the more money they will pay. So let's look at that end part of the economy where we have productive energy production and productive energy use. Then we can think about how to structure instruments either through the capital markets or through the banking sector to support that. In terms of collection, like I said, we can borrow learnings from the telco company, how they'll be able to pay upfront and payment. Technology today enables you to tap. So let's be able to do that from a bank's perspective. If you write the right smart meters, I can use my card to tap. The money will go straight from the bank to the telco, to the energy company, and light will come. So we are very smart people. Let's use the education that we've been given to benefit ourselves.
And your final point?
One final point, and you got me there. And all of a sudden,
Maybe that was the final point.
now
I'll come back to
All
you.
right.
I'll come back to you for your concluding remarks. Yes.
All right. So
Dr. Derry.
Christophe and my friend have already touched on how to
Mr.
minimize transmission losses and losses associated with operations. So it means that once that is done and you increase the energy mix, more renewable energies into the grid, then definitely the cost of energy will come down for households and also for industry, because you have dealt with the losses that are currently increasing the cost. So that is the first point. But in Ghana, we are doing very well. We have tried to, first and foremost, do some reforms. We've changed some transformers and bulk station distributed. I mean, a lot of equipments have been changed in there just to improve the system. And I know ECG is still doing a lot when it comes to the collection part to improve that. Once those things are put in place and you increase renewable energy in the energy mix, then definitely the cost will come down. That's number one. Number two is the fact that we have to prepare very well as we try to transition to renewable, especially solar. We've talked about batteries, and Christophe, you mentioned how to store energy, because the energy is not going to be there 24 hours. Because once you get to the evening, then of course you wouldn't have solar energy. And so you need to store energy. And I'm happy that Ghana is developing a lithium policy, to see how we can quickly tap into our lithium resources in order to manufacture batteries. And once the batteries are manufactured here, the cost of batteries will also go down, and it will make it affordable to the Ghanaian people. The third point is that if you look at our carbon trading agreements that we are signing with countries, one of the areas we are focusing on is renewable energy. And carbon credits come in to subsidize the cost of renewables. So scientifically, it is said that it's able to subsidize the cost of production between 20 to about 30%. And so definitely that would affect pricing also. So pricing would definitely come down, because if companies are able to get funding from the emissions that they are going to reduce, and so they are expected, to channel this also to the pricing of the products that they put out, so that if you get money from the carbon market, you are expected to also subsidize the cost of the product. And then maybe finally, we also need to educate people when it comes to energy efficiency. A lot of waste in the system. People leave their houses, leave their fridges, air conditioners, and so forth on. I believe that when people are educated to understand what energy efficiency is, buy very efficient energy equipments and appliances, and so forth, that will also reduce their bills when it comes to how much they pay for energy. So all these things have to be looked at holistically, to be able to provide affordable energy in this part of the world.
Doctor, your additional comments?
So I think that as I started, I spoke about the Nairobi Declaration, which is very important. I think that stakeholders, are committed to ensuring that we accelerate quickly and transit to renewable energy. As a regional financial institution, we are committed to ensuring that we finance climate resilient infrastructure. I'm talking about sustainable infrastructure. I'm talking about public transport. I'm talking about management. Waste management. These are the things that the bank is committed to ensuring. However, we expect all borrowers, all businesses to make sure that their things are in order before they come to the bank. To the bank. As a bank, we are also ESG compliant in accordance with global policy. And of course, we must bear in mind that we are all heading towards fulfilling the SDGs by 2030. You know the SDGs I'm talking about. We know climate and the SDG 13, very important. We're talking about equality, SDG 10. We are talking about renewable energy, SDG 7. These are the things that as a bank, we are committed to ensuring that these things are fulfilled. So we want to encourage all borrowers, all businesses to make sure that the bank is for them and we are ready to finance all projects relating to renewable energy. They should only make sure that their things are in order and they should contact us. At this, I would like to thank you, for that. And we look forward to receiving a number of, applications, and then we wait and see how best as a region we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, we have just about 6 minutes being shared amongst 4 articulate men. So let me quickly say that our concluding remarks will be on the opportunities for smart technologies. I'm really interested in that, especially for agriculture and how we can make this a reality in the country. If you think your policy, you can talk from policy perspective, from investment perspective and all. I'll give you the last minute, the last bit, and then we'll close with you. So Christophe.
Thank you. So brief, maybe 2-3 things that I wanted to mention, and that also relates to agriculture. But there is a very, very important topic for me is adaptation. We talk a lot about mitigation, meaning reducing emission of CO2, but I think, and for a lot of people, adaptation is key, and especially for farmers. Your climate environment will change, and I just find an interesting statistic saying that basically 50% of Africans consider that climate conditions for agricultural production have gotten worse in the last 10 years. So really, I think finding ways to support farmers to adapt is really key. But I think there is a lot of opportunities. We've been talking about climate financing. I think this is an opportunity. There is really room to access more funding to basically finance project linked to either adaptation of mitigation. And one very last thing that I wanted to say, that I think that if you take an institution like AFD, what we would like to see actually is, and we were talking, President, you were talking about the Africa Summit, Climate Summit. It's really, I think, great for an institution like AFD because you will have an homegrown initiative proposing projects that are basically that will be ready to finance. I think there is room for such an initiative, and the Africa Climate Summit and all what is done it's a good way.
Thank you very much, Christophe, for your concluding remarks. I want to quickly add this information from the World Bank on Ghana in relation to climate smart technologies when it comes to solutions. They were looking at adopting an integral approach, which I think will not be different from what will happen in the rest of West Africa, building sustainable cities and resilient infrastructure systems, boosting disaster risk preparedness, realizing new opportunities for managing forest resources, promoting a transition to clean energy by scaling up renewable energy sources, and then modernizing the transportation systems. So these were some of the climate smart solutions that the World Bank professed for Ghana. So please, your quick takes.
I think that, yes, so these are climate smart solutions, but I think your question initially was on agriculture.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so there are opportunities. I mean, we depend on agriculture very much, this part of the world. And unfortunately, that sector is very vulnerable because of the fact that we rely on rain-fed agriculture to thrive, and that's a big challenge. So the opportunities are there. We can use, for example, renewable energy for agriculture. We can use renewable energy even to deal with post-harvest losses, to establish cooling systems and storage facilities, because one of the biggest issues that is leading to the increase in prices when it comes to food is because of the fact that we are unable to deal with post-harvest losses. And so by the time the foods get to the cities, then the price goes very, very high. So that is one area. Then there are very simple technologies when it comes to sustainable land management practices. For example, if you take rice production, for example, we have what is known as the alternative wet and drying program, where you are able to control the amount of water that is injected onto rice farms. And this also helps reduce methane emissions into the atmosphere. So you are helping farmers to adapt, and yet you're also dealing with reduction as far as emissions are concerned. So there are quite a lot of opportunities that we can capitalize on as a country when it comes to smart agriculture technologies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Derry. I have just a minute for you because I have 2 minutes to go.
All I would say is climate change is good business for financiers. There's a lot of massive opportunities. You talk about agriculture. Africa needs to build resilience and adaptation solutions. We import too much food. We don't process enough. So these are areas where there are opportunities. Now we talk about, I was going to give a practical experience of a friend of mine in Zambia who actually uses renewables on all his farms. No backup generators or anything. Basically, we need to change the way we do things. The sun shines for best part of the day. Let's do most of our heavy energy production and heavy use during that time when the sun is shining and we can use the panels. I'll just say two things in terms of climate finance meets smart agriculture. The AFDB, working with the FDB at the moment, and this is a partnership we can have with all two of you, the Green Investment Partner Program for Africa in terms of agriculture and SMEs, as well as the African Finance Alliance on Climate Change. These are both initiatives that we can partner on to solve some of these problems that we're talking about, and we'll discuss much later after the session. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Mr. Lala. And Mr. President, you have the final words, but my team in Metro and everybody is wondering, this has been good conversation, and they would want this to be more regular than just a one-off. And so they would like to find out if this will happen on a quarterly basis or monthly basis or daily basis, because that's plenty of money for everybody.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, distinguished panelists, viewers, and ladies and gentlemen. Let me conclude by saying that the challenges that we face as Africans and the solutions are all in our hands. One professor said that everybody is the cause of 75% of his or her problem. He said, if you succeed, it is your fault. If you fail, it is your fault. I think that talking about climate change, the solutions lie with us as Africans. We must do everything. We must do our best possible to ensure that we address all the climate challenges we have while promoting jobs, creating wealth, and then also promoting sustainability and ensuring that our region becomes the best on the whole world. on the whole continent. As a bank, what we can do is to also offer resources at very concessional rate, provided we also get support from AFD, my friend from AFD. We grant, we extend grants and then very low interest rate to ensure that businesses in the sub-region flourish. and all of us are in compliance with environmental challenges. On this note, I would like to thank all of you, and then want to assure you that this is not the first. EBID will be knocking at your doors and then continually engage all stakeholders in this conversation, which I think that will be a source of education to all our citizens in the sub-region. On this note, I thank you very much for your participation and look forward to having very fruitful collaboration in future. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
My name is Odilia Ntiamwa, and I am the Global Director for the Oxford Africa Women Leadership Institute, and we support women-led businesses with access to finance, access to technical support, and access to markets. And I must say that we are creating actually the first Africa's green branding hub in Ghana here, and it's because we realize that many people are actually using materials that are plastic that actually do not serve green purposes to package their items, and so it will be great to also work collaboratively with all of you. I did this fantastic work with EBID. EBID has been actually the supporter, creator of this presidential roundtable. Thank you so much, EBID, for making this conversation happen, not just in West Africa, but choosing Ghana to make this happen. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Christophe Cote, who is the country director for Ghana and Liberia when it comes to Agence Française de Développement. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Derry, who's the Director for Environment and Climate Change, Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation for Ghana. I'd like to say a big thank you to you also, Mr. Olumide Lala, who is the co-founder and executive director, Climate Finance Solutions, Climate Transition Limited. And a big thank you to you, Dr. George Agyekum Donkor, who's the president and chairman of the board of directors of EBID. Thank you so much for you also who's been sitting at home watching. To Metro TV, we say a big thank you to the technical team. You've been such a wonderful team working on this to make sure that it really is delivered with excellence. Thank you for watching, you who's at home, and I'm sure we'll have this conversation again pretty soon. Thank you.
We are West Africa's premium bank for investment and development. With over 40 years experience, we are the only development finance institution that covers all 15 member states of ECOWAS, continuously driving developmental projects in the West African sub-region. For decades, we have tackled socio-economic challenges through our financing of programs that cover diverse initiatives for the sustainable development of member states. We provide financing for regional and national projects across priority sectors such as infrastructure, agriculture and climate resilience, industry and agro-processing, healthcare and education, transport and logistics, water, ICT and energy. We are a key driver of transformation, effecting positive change in the present for a future resilient, enabled and resourceful sub-region. We operate in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Côte d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. We have deep roots in innovating technology and growth. We initiated the African Biofuels and Renewable Energy Fund, ABREF. Now ABREC are founding shareholders of Askai Airlines and a founding shareholder in EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, ETI. We have and continue to enable key projects through our public and private windows with successful projects such as creation of the cement factory in Kagblelen by Diamond Cement Company, Guinea. Enhancement of the portable water supply system in Tafire Town and the surrounding communities of Badikaha and Ngolodugu, Côte d'Ivoire. Rehabilitation and equipment of health facilities, Togo. Electrification by solar photovoltaic systems of 700 community infrastructure, Benin. Construction of 27 new drinking water supply systems in the impact area of the Samendeni Valley Integrated Development Program, Burkina Faso. Construction of the University of Science and Technology in the town of Koidu, Kono District, Sierra Leone. Installation and operation of an intravenous fluids factory at Verte by Do Pharma, Togo. Construction of a 120 megawatt thermal station at Maria Gleta, Benin. Construction of the Samendeni Dam and Hydroelectric Power Station, Burkina Faso, to mention a few. We are poised to fulfill our developmental mandate under the leadership of the President, Dr. George Agyekum Donkor. We are EBID. EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities. We have more information for you at www.bidc-ebid.org.